Hey, it's Ev with the Bluff Council. The Oscars were last night, as you're probably aware. I wanted to share a few of my thoughts on the ceremony, reflections on the winners, the losers. There weren't a ton of surprises, but there were a couple, I thought, and also go through our predictions, mine and Keith's, see how we did, how we fared in our head-to-head matchup. So let's talk about all these things.
And welcome to the 96th Oscars, everybody.
First, just sort of like an overarching umbrella view of the show itself. I thought it was totally fine. I feel like my wife and I are sort of right in the prime Oscar demographic. Like, we grew up huge fans of movies. We've watched Oscars forever. We literally watch old Oscar ceremonies on YouTube sometimes. That's the level to which we're taking it. We're Oscars connoisseurs, you might say. And I thought the show was just sort of like middle of the road. You know, it was just like, it was fine. It wasn't like, oh God, like that pandemic year in the train station. And then it wasn't like so memorable or amazing for any really great or like jarring reason, like La La Land, Moonlight situation, or The Slap, obviously.
Keep my wife's name out your...
So it was just kind of fine. A lot of that is set by the host. Jimmy Kimmel does fine. You know, he's fine. He's always just kind of like the safe bet who's gonna rib people a little bit and make fun of names and...
Will they both win? Your ghost is as good as mine.
It's just not like, it doesn't have a lot of oomph. As a quick aside, I was talking about this with my wife just a week or so ago, just like, man, Jimmy Kimmel, I'm just kind of like, it'd be great if there was like a comedian, you know? Like, no offense to Jimmy Kimmel, but like a practicing stand-up comic that could go in there and deliver a little bit. And she's like, who are you talking about? And I was like, you know, like somebody, I don't know, Bill Burr, maybe, it's not really his style, but, and she was like, oh, so you mean like John Mulaney? And I was like, yes, exactly like John Mulaney. We saw this clip of him doing an award show recently, like one of the sub-genres of the Academy Awards, I think. And he was so funny. And then he came out in the Oscars and was so funny. And then Twitter is like, John Mulaney should host. And we're like, we deserve credit for that. So I think Jimmy Kimmel's presence is fine. I think the jokes were fine. I thought, you know, there were some funny bits, but there just wasn't anything that was like so memorable outside of maybe I'm Just Ken, performed by Ryan Gosling, which was tremendously fun. And while I was watching that, I was like, this is the song of the year. Like, I want to sing. I don't even like Barbie. Like, I didn't like that movie. But while that performance was happening, he's so endearing. It's so entertaining. I wanted to sing. And in that moment, I was like, I should have picked this song for best original song. But, you know, it was Billie Eilish, which was also a very beautiful performance and what I picked. But, you know, the other memorable bit was actually like Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt doing their little back and forth where she accused him of having abs painted on, and his performance in that was really funny.
Mister, I need to paint my abs on to get nominated. You don't see Robert Downey doing that.
You're kidding.
You're
kidding. I thought John Cena showing up naked to, you know, pay homage to the streaker from back in the day was funny. I went down a terrible rabbit hole on Twitter about, humiliation rituals. Like, my God, guys, too much time on your hands. I think the main thing that was kind of lacking to me for this ceremony goes hand in hand with one of the sort of like general complaints people have about the Oscars more recently especially, is because award season is so long and because the Oscars comes at the end of that, so many things are no longer surprising. And then also, so, you know, there's predictable, most categories are fairly predictable, but also what comes with that is the performers who expect to win a lot of times can be a little underwhelming, like in their speeches, and it's not on them to perform for us in that moment. But in Oscars past, some of the most memorable moments, often the most memorable moments, come from winners and giving these speeches that are emotional and raw and real. And
I know that my work in this case is magnified by the fact that the streets of heaven are too crowded with angels.
Olivia Colman comes immediately to mind. Like, it's funny, just like charming, endearing, people who probably didn't really expect to win. But here you have really three of the four. I mean, Da'Vine Joy Randolph gave a totally nice speech and was emotional and genuine, obviously. I thought both Robert Downey Jr. and Cillian Murphy, their speeches were a little underwhelming. Just, again, this is like so a goofy thing to talk about, but just in terms of entertainment value from our perspective of the show, like just a little underwhelming, really kind of locked in for the most part. And then Emma Stone was probably the most surprised. That was, in the moment, I thought that might be the biggest shock of the night. As someone who went into this show being like, it's 50-50, Lily Gladstone, Emma Stone, whoever wins won't be surprised. But in the moment, I was kind of shocked. Like, and I think Lily Gladstone was surprised too, just based on the reaction. I think it was all set up for her. And I enjoyed all the jokes on Twitter and whatnot about Emma Stone winning being just an extension of The Curse. If you haven't watched The Curse, check it out. Taking an award from a Native American person. I think she was in an unenviable position in that regard to be like, oh no, I don't want to be the reason Lily Gladstone didn't win. But Emma Stone did give probably the best performance of the year. So it's, I guess, just strictly on merit, which award should be, she was probably the most deserving. But that moment surprised me. I was so pleasantly surprised by The Zone of Interest winning Best Sound, in particular. International film was a layup. But Best Sound, it seemed like it was kind of going back and forth. A lot of people were saying it was Oppenheimer's to lose, and they did. I think, look no further than just like the little Best Picture blurbs that they play throughout the film to showcase the nominees. No dialogue in Zone of Interest. It was just that like haunting, like rah, rah, with other sounds, and it's just like the Zone of Interest. And that's just incredible to me. The sound played such an important role in that film. It's a character in of itself, as we've said on the show before. So it was just, that was really exciting. I was really happy to see Poor Things clean up the way it did, particularly in those, like, the production design, the costume, the hair and makeup. Like, those were all ones that a lot of people thought could go to Barbie. I thought Poor Things was superior to Barbie in really every conceivable way, but also in those categories. I thought Keith and I talked about this on our Oscars episode, where I'm more impressed personally by the creativity it takes to create these worlds out of thin air, as opposed to taking existing creative elements and making those and recreating those in such an incredible way. Barbie's production design and all that stuff was really great. But I'm so happy to see Poor Things get those wins. And as I mentioned in our Best Films of the Year episode, I'm just so stoked to see Poor Things be celebrated so much, because it is so weird and non-mainstream in a lot of ways. I think it's going to expose a lot of people to a much more different kind of film than a lot of people usually see. So I think that's really exciting. I liked Poor Things a ton and love Yorgos Lanthimos' work. So really, really cool to see. So how did we do in our predictions? For people that claim to be never wrong in our videos, right? I mean, and I don't think I'm wrong. It's the Academy that's wrong. My own personal ballot, so to speak, my voting ballot, I did 18 and 5 out of 23 categories. I'm not super disappointed in myself. The thing I'm most mad about is at the very last moment, I changed my vote from Poor Things in makeup and hairstyling to Maestro. I allowed myself to be corrupted by the prevailing wisdom. Maestro was the favorite. And even though I selected Poor Things in my head-to-head matchup with Keith and defended that choice at like a day before, before the Oscars, I switched it to Maestro, and now I'm kicking myself because obviously Poor Things won all those categories. So I gotta learn to trust myself. But then the inverse of that is I was stubbornly picking Barbie for adapted screenplay, not because I liked Barbie's screenplay per se, but because I did think, I'm surprised, that's probably one of my biggest shocks maybe, is that Barbie only walked away with original song, right? Deservingly. But I'm surprised that the Academy wouldn't award it more. And I thought this was the place to rebel against all of the snub talk of Greta not being there for director. I thought, oh, they'll just give it to her, and then they get Noah Baumbach up there, and then everybody's happy, everybody likes them. And so I thought that would carry further than it did. But obviously not. It went to Cord Jefferson for American Fiction, which we talked about a little bit on one of our episodes. I thought was like a fine movie. I thought it was good. I thought the screenplay was a little too screenplay-y at times, where people they're just a little too clever for their own good, and I start to hear the writer in the screenplay. And obviously, what the hell do I know? I've written one terrible film that's been made, and several terrible films that haven't been made. And Cord Jefferson is standing there with an Oscar. So far be it for me to be critical of his script. But it was just for my personal taste. I didn't love that film's writing as much as, obviously, the Academy or a lot of other people. I did love Cord Jefferson's speech, though. I thought that was a high point for all of us movie fans and folks that are aspiring to make larger and larger films ourselves.
I understand that this is a risk-averse industry. I get it. But $200 million movies are also a risk, and it doesn't always work out, but you take the risk anyway.
Take a break from $200 million films, which have such big requirements that you have to fill to make that money back. And like he said, make $10 million films. Just give me $200 million. I'll make $10 million films. You think these regional Emmys win themselves? They don't. They do sometimes, a little bit. If you're like a newscaster that just stays in the same area, you know, the same region for 30 years, those guys have like 150 regional Emmys. Now mine means something. Mine mean more. No offense to the regional newscasters who were doing excellent work for so long. Consistency is important. So I came up short on makeup. I came up short on adapted screenplay. I was picking with my heart for Killers of the Flower Moon for editing. That one, I was just sticking my neck out there. That's kind of like the Barbie a little bit too, where I was like, they have to give Killers of the Flower Moon something. They can't keep nominating on Scorsese films for so much and not having him win any, as was the case with Gangs of New York and The Irishman, both nominated over 10 times, just like Killers of the Flower Moon, no wins. Like, that's painful, that's weird. That's weird. That movie deserved something. I also came up short on Best Actress because I did think Killers of the Flower Moon. I thought Lily Gladstone was going to win that. I also came up short on documentary short, which Keith and I in our head-to-head didn't even talk about the short films because we hadn't watched any this year. So I was just kind of going off prevailing favorites. So congratulations to that winner. That film looks really interesting, The Last Repair Shop. I will check it out. So Keith and I, in our head-to-head matchup, our draft, I emerged victorious yet again, Keith. That's 2 wins and a draw for the 3 years we've done this. It came to 12 and 8. Well, I was blowing him out at first, but then his categories were all at the end, and he got to pick first, you know, actress and director and picture. So he came on strong at the end. 12 and 8, so I get to do another t-shirt for Keith one of these days. But although he should have to pay for this one, I had to pay $30 for that t-shirt that I sent him, and then pay $30 for rush shipping. I'm out $60. He didn't even wear the shirt. So I mean, that seems bullshit. So another shirt, Keith's gonna pay for it. It's gonna be much more involved and horrible. So we'll have that to look forward to next year. So in closing, it was all good. Would love to see someone like John Mulaney come in, host, inject a little more life, a little more oomph into some of this stuff. I thought it was a really weird choice to have all the past acting winners come out to like speak about each individual nominee. Not a bad choice per se. I was recently editing our episode for Tropic Thunder, and in that episode I was going through old Oscars clips to showcase Robert Downey Jr.'s nomination for that character in Tropic Thunder. And that year they did that same thing where they brought out, you know, the past actors to talk about it. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, can you believe they used to do this? I remember when they did that. And there is a certain level of like reverence. I'm sure if you're the Academy, you're like, you guys keep saying we need to show more reverence for the films and past winners of Hollywood and filmmaking, but then you complain that things are too long. What do you want from us? Which I understand that. But like, weird choice to not show clips from the nominated performances. Like that's always gonna bother me when they decide not to do that. Like, you need to show evidence of the people's work. And so if you have to choose between having these past winners that aren't necessarily directly tied to these nominees come out and introduce them, because most of them say kind of similar things too. It's just like, you give an amazing transformative performance and you're a wonderful person. And it's like, cool, but like, there's gotta be a better way to shrink that down, to still show reverence. Maybe have all those past winners come out and just present and read their, you know, it just becomes too much, especially at the expense of showing the nominees' work. That was interesting. So in closing, for real this time, I think it was mostly fine. We had a good time. I think it was enjoyable. It's great to see Oppenheimer, which was obviously the film of the year, do so well. Great to see Poor Things kind of be like that second place winner, which surprised me a little bit, but happy surprise. And there was a lot of little moments that were enjoyable throughout. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this Oscars adventure this year. We you know, we're a small channel, but we saw a lot of growth yesterday, a lot of conversation. It's just been a really fun weekend interacting with all of you, and we hope you stick around as we continue this wonderful Bluff Council journey. Thank you guys very much for joining us.